Well, hello YouTube. Euramax is back. It's kind of cold outside. It's not kind of cold, it's really cold. It's about -5 or 10 degrees outside. There's not really much to do. Everything's frozen, so I figured this would be a good time to start making a little series of videos that I've been getting a lot of questions from my friends and from some YouTubers about, about reloading. That is such a vast subject. I think we could sit here and talk for days before we even touch any of the equipment. However, first step always is, determine is it going to be worth it? Not just financially, it's going to be worth your time, because this reloading is not as easy as it seems. It's not just pick up a book and go buy some equipment, buy a little cheap RCBS kit at local gun store and start working. Once you master it, it is quite a straightforward process. However, I always say that it's more of an art than a science, or at least equal parts. As much as we use science to make sure that all the parameters are met, that all the rules are followed, there's also that feel thing. For example, priming a case. I use a hand primer, so you fully seat the primer, but you always check with your finger. You always check to make sure, because you can measure it, but you can feel it also after you've done it enough times. After you have the the black thumb from all the powder residue, you can feel it. You can see it. Same with seating the bullet. You can feel if something's wrong. You can feel if that bullet's not really seating the way it's supposed to, and you can just double check. Then you use your science to verify the art part of it. Now, this first video we're going to focus just on the equipment, just on some basic equipment you need. I don't have very elaborate setup, and as you can see, I have different manufacturers. It's not all green or all blue or all orange. I've acquired different pieces of equipment. Some have worked for me, some have not. So I've kind of acquired the things that I can afford and they work for me. So how do you go from this, a spent casing, to making this, to making a round? To me, this round produces a produces a 0.3 MOA accuracy out of my 308 Remington 700 SPS 20-inch tactical. How do you go from just piece of brass to a high precision round? Well, like I said, we're going to start with the equipment, and we're going to review that in 1 second. We're going to go over every single piece of equipment. Now, first and foremost, you need a good reloading manual. You need good, reputable. I have Spear, and I also have a Hornady, which I downloaded on as an PDF in my iBooks, which I am not really thrilled that I did that. I'm just gonna go buy a paper one. I also have kind of what I started with was one of these handy dandy beginner's manuals. They'll kind of give you some basic components and it'll give you some basic formulas. It's kind of good start, just kind of read very basics. Then you move on to the real manual. So you also, when it comes to the manual, you're also going to need your reloading notebook, where you're going to write your load data. You're going to bring home your targets from the range. You're going to write down all the parameters, how you sighted and how they behaved. And this is just an example of how I was testing different cartridge overall lengths. And you can see this one started with 2.8, 2.815, 2.830, and that was the one that gave me the best 0.268 MOA, best results. Now that's just a snapshot of what you do. That's probably one of the last things you can do when you do a load development. So once you have a good manual, once you know what your reloading cartridge is going to be, then we're going to move on to some basic equipment. First, you're going to need a good set of dies. I use Redding dies, and I also bought a Redding shell holder. I had some trouble with the RCBS shell holders, so I went and bought Redding shell holders, Redding dies. This particular set came with a full body sizing and seating, and I also, when I purchased this neck sizing die, because I'm going to be shooting this precision load out of one rifle only, and I'll be able to save the service life of my brass by neck sizing only. So once you have that, now you need you're gonna need a loading block. You can make those, you can buy them. Sometimes I use my there you go. This comes from ammo box of 45 ACP pistol, and I use that as my loading block when I'm doing higher quantities. This is my hand priming tool, and this over here is actually quite handy dandy. I've used that more than once. This is one of those insurance items. That's a bullet puller. It'll disassemble your bullet without putting you in too much of a danger. And as you can see over there in the corner, I have some cases that have been prepped, marking your brass, so what it is, manufacturer, and I have my own unique way of marking it. Like that one says ready, and I know what that means to me, but you need to find a way to mark it, because you won't always finish from start to finish your reloading your rounds, so you'll find yourself, you know, kind of going halfway here or there. So make sure you know how everything is marked and what everything means to you. So we have a loading block, we have a little funnel, we have a trickler for your powder. When it comes to powder, there's a powder scale. I like this digital scale. It's been working really well for me. It's kind of cheap, but accurate and consistent, which is very important. And then you have your digital caliper. Also, doesn't have to be digital, but I like this Frankfurt Arsenal scale and the caliper. That's just what I was able to get at my local store. Now here's something that I've kind of had some challenges with. Not this particular, but this is Imperial Sizing Die Wax by Redding. I've used different lubes and different products to lube the cases, and they leave a lot of residue. This one happens to work really, really well. I love it. You just take a tiny little dab. So if you're gonna one-handed without messing up. There you just take one little dab, and you can actually do a couple of cases with it. It's really nice. It's easy to clean, no residue. Now this Hornady Lock and Load Headspace Compared kit. This is also a lifesaver. This is almost a must, I would say, when it comes to precision rounds. Now this one is to compare the actual shoulder of your case, to see your dimensions of your case from the shoulder, not overall length. This one compares once you make your round, make your cartridge, it compares it from the ogive of the bullet down to the datum line. It's just a little more accurate way of measuring your bullet. As you can see, this round here, this is 168 grain AMAX. It has a plastic tip, and that plastic tip is not always 100% concentric or at the same length. So what I do is I measure off the ogive, which I know is consistent. Even with the metal tips, even with your bow tail hollow points, soft tips, whatever you're using, that tip can have variations, and I've caught it. I actually, in one particular time, I was chasing the overall length. It took me an hour to figure out why I kept moving my die, and that's why I kind of just gave up and I went to the store and I bought that comparator kit, and that kind of solved a lot of my headaches. And I just have here this powder measuring. Again, this is a cheap one. I have one set up for each cartridge that I reload. So it'll get you very close, and it's actually consistent. Even if your scale, gets bumped or whatever, I haven't had any variations with this one. It's cheap, but it works. You can use the same base, and you just kind of pop a couple screws and put a new one on, and you kind of mark them, label them what they are, and for which powder, because different powder is going to measure differently. So you got to make sure you pay attention to all that. Now down here, some other components. So you can see some more die sets, powders, bullets, primers. That's a lubing case lube pad. So I have a lot of different equipment. Now this is part of my case prep tools. So you have chamfer and deburring tool, you have primer, pocket cleaning, large and small, and I also use some Q-tips after I use this brush to kind of brush all the. So you chamfer, deburr, you do a little brush, and then I use these tips to kind of clean. And this is just a piece of wire kind of tool that I made for myself to clean on your sizing dies. They have little flash holes. Sometimes if you do a lot of rounds and if you don't clean a lot in between, they can get plugged, and that just relieves the pressure from that die. So I kind of use this. Plus, if there's any tumbling media stuck in your primer pocket, I don't use a flash hole uniforming tool. I think that's the next thing I'm going to do. But so here's another very useful tool. This is kind of like your go no go gauge. This, when you drop your casing in there, so it has cuts here, and you can see by the shading, and you will know that this case can only be between these two different depths of cuts. And if it's protruding high, so it will not chamber, but if it's sunken in too much, then it can also be dangerous. So, and then on the other side of that, and as you can see, this case needs to be trimmed. So you put it on this side, and then if it protrudes past the outer one, it needs to be trimmed, which means it's exceeding your case overall length. And if you sized it well, it should just fall right out. If you get stuck, it's not good. So there you go, that's with the live round. You can see that it's perfect, and that's the kind. So there you go, that's some basic equipment for your reloading needs. Alright, two big pieces of equipment here. We have the case trimming tool. This is one's by Lyman, but there are many of them on the market, powered and manual. And of course your press. I just upgraded to the Chucker Pro. It's a really nice solid press. I need to get a different handle. I need to get a more ergonomic handle, just because of the volume of rounds I've been reloading. But those are also a couple big pieces of equipment you need. I suggest you think long and hard before you buy one of these. You know, some people go with progressive, some people go with turrets, automated, whatever. This is one of the most expensive purchases you're going to make here. So think about what you want to do. I personally do, like I said, precision rounds, low volume. I don't make 1,000 rounds a month. If I make 100. So this, I feel this gives me the most control, most power over my rounds to make sure that they're at the quality that I desire. You can choose to go with turret. You can, because some turrets have, you can get interchangeable plates and turrets, and you can have different calibers set up, and that's great. Like I said, if you're doing higher volumes, again, I am not. I go with precision, and that's why I decided to spend a little more money on dies. I say dies, don't try to save a lot of money there. Buy quality, and then buy a purpose press that you know you're gonna use to your advantage.